is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled Book Club, covering Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. In this episode, this is basically every nerd's wet dream made into a book. Welcome to Unspoiled. All right. Welcome to the show, everybody. Those who are listening, I am also welcoming those who are live watching this right now on Crowdcast and joining us in the chat section. So welcome to all of my live people. Hi. Had a little bit of a rough beginning, but my name's Natasha.
And I am Chris, otherwise known as Money.
So this book was a welcome relief after two pretty bleak books in a row.
Yeah.
What did you think of this? How did, because you said you wanted to take my temperature on it when I started it.
I'm going to give you the pitch I gave on the Buffy podcast. This book is the worst example of self-indulgent, Gamergate wish fulfillment, Gen X worshipping 80s bullshit genre trash, and I loved every goddamn word of it.
That really does sum it up. Like, I'm reading it, and part of me is like, oh, God, okay. Yeah, all right, that's what we're doing. But then another part of me is like, this is so awesome, I don't care, it's fine. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I want to point out for all of you listeners that I'm going to be saying some things that I'm going to be pretty critical on this book and on the author. But I really loved this book, and I volunteered for this because it's such an engaging read. But there's a lot that goes unexamined here, and it's really a popcorn book. So
Yep.
Like, I don't want anything that I say to make you think that you shouldn't read this book, or that it's not woke enough for you, or that it's problematic. It is those things, but it's also worth your fucking time. So,
Agreed. Yeah, it was the kind of book that you fucking need after you've read Blindness and Winter's Bone. This was like perfect timing for me to read this, where I'm just like, I hate the world. I hate everybody in the world. I hate most of the people who run the world, and everything is terrible. And then somebody was like, here is something that will make you feel good. And like, engaged is definitely a good word for it. And just overall, like, it sort of reminded me of going to a blockbuster superhero movie where you just can turn your brain off and be like, yeah, the good guys win. Yay. You know, you need that sometimes. You just do.
I started to keep a list of like all the nitpicky things that I had a problem with, but I kind of gave up because even though this was my second time reading the book, it was much more enjoyable to just sit back and enjoy the ride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of the, like, I'm very torn about my methods for reading the books that I do for book club, because I think when we were talking about it in Facebook Messenger, you called it bingeable. Was it you that said that? And it is, and because of that, I kept wanting to stop and like get a highlighter and highlight things, but it just didn't feel right to keep stopping like that. Like, it just ruined the momentum of everything. So I kind of wish, because it's more that it ruined the momentum, because I'm not in the habit of just carrying a highlighter on me. Shockingly enough, somebody like me would think, with my obsession with stationery and whatnot. But sometimes I wish that I was reading this on a Kindle and I could just, highlight with my finger the way that you can do, and just snatch little things here and there, because there are moments in this that I wish I had pinpointed a little bit more.
Before you buy a Kindle for that purpose, I just want to say that highlighting on the Kindle is not an easy task. So,
really?
Yeah, it can be kind of a pain. because sometimes it'll get words or it'll go a line beneath it because your finger's too big for this tiny ass screen. So, I mean, I love my Kindle in the fact that, like, you can see my bookshelf back there. You know what there's not on? A whole bunch of books. That's a lot less that I have to move every time I move to live in a new place. So, but it does have some drawbacks, like trying to find something in the book when you're searching for a random phrase you may have remembered, and highlighting and taking notes is not easy. The keyboard is super clunky. So, like, it's only really worth doing it if you're doing it on your computer with the cloud reader. So. Oh,
okay. Yeah, because I've used it on my phone. What's that?
Because then you're not sitting on the couch. You're at your desk.
Yeah. Although I could be with my laptop, but it's still not the same. But yeah, I've used it on my phone a few times, and it's driven me crazy because I'll touch to turn the page, and instead it highlights a whole bunch of things. And then I have to figure out how to undo that and whatever. So I have a very fraught relationship, because really, in my ideal world, I could get the paper copy, the Kindle copy, and the audiobook copy of everything, and then just be able to read and listen to it whenever and not have to, pick. But with this, I just basically, read it in the yard and in the bathtub, and I flew through it. It took me maybe 3 days to read the whole thing.
Yeah,
so,
it's 2 plane rides and I was done. So,
it's divided rather than chapters. It's divided into levels, which I enjoy, of course. And the first one is just 4 zeros, and it starts off telling us about Halliday's egg and the hunt. And I liked this exposition section, the section after where he's describing the, sort of decline of humanity. That's where I sort of started to feel like, okay, this exposition's getting a little bit clunky. Thankfully, he doesn't spend too terribly much time on that. But it did feel at times, I think it was Joyce Bangora in the book club group on Facebook that called the protagonist insufferable. And I kind of get it, because his tone, his voice, as they say, is pretty smug most of the time.
So here's a question for you.
Okay.
Who is the author? Who is the Mary Sue in this book? Is it Halliday or is it Wade?
Wade.
You think so?
Yeah, definitely.
Can I pull out my author knowledge now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I did a little Wikipedia research, and it turns out that he also put Easter eggs in the book. So there are hidden URLs in there where you go, and if you go to that URL, you play an 80s video game, and the first person to win that won a DeLorean.
What?
Yes.
What? That is the biggest commitment.
Well, let's be real here, because another thing I discovered is that long before he became a novelist, he was a very successful screenwriter. So this dude he's not exactly this is a lifelong. Yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's got editors. He's got a team to pull this kind of shit off. He's got experience in the video gaming world. So it's not. I mean, but it is pretty cool that he did something like that. Where
is it hidden? Can you tell me?
That I could not find out through the Wikipedia dives I did, but apparently someone in 2012 did win a DeLorean for figuring this out. So I will do some research. And
did he tell them that this was there, or did somebody just figure this whole book's about Easter eggs? I bet he did that.
No, he made an announcement well after the book was published, but he didn't give them any clues. So, and I haven't figured out how it works. So I need to go dive into the deep web and find some of those Comic Sans websites that were probably detailing their findings and shit. So
live journal accounts.
Yeah. So like I said, he was a screenwriter, and he's been very successful before he was a novelist, and this was and he was born in 1972, which figures for all of the 80s nostalgia that's going on here.
Yeah, most definitely.
Did you How much of Overdue are you caught up on?
I've listened to a lot of it. I don't remember how far back they go, how many episodes they have, but I've listened to at least 100 of them.
So I was remembering when they covered Jurassic Park and they talked about Michael Crichton, and they say what the phrase "God give me the confidence of a mediocre white man," and they were talking about Michael Crichton. It feels a little like Ernest Cline is the inheritor to that now that Crichton is dead.
I can see that.
Yeah, and again, I love this book, but it's very mansplainy. It always stays in wherever this Gen X pop culture wheelhouse is. It doesn't really stray anywhere else. And it seems to not want you to question some of the things that set up the premise. Like if he put like all of this money in the trust, none of his lawyers are going to be bought out, or his company is not going to be bought out by anyone else. And there's no corporate shenanigans that can make this happen. It's all about winning the contest. And I'm like, I don't think that would fly.
Yeah. I mean, there's that whole thing is basically just like, you just have to be like, yeah, okay. It's kind of funny though, because then he's like, I'm going to set this thing up and you have to accept it, but I'm also going to make it a big point that there's a company trying to exploit a loophole. So it's sort of feeling like, your whole shtick revolves around me just accepting that this is how it is, but you also want me to recognize that there is a loophole and that somebody would be wanting to exploit that. And you just decided to limit it to this one group. And the only way they've decided to exploit it is this one way, by trying to beat the contest. And I'm like, I mean, okay, fine. But it is sort of a strange thing to like direct a light over there. And if you try and shine the light anywhere else, he's like, no. But he still wants the light, I'm like, all right,
exactly.
Fine.
And he wants the light on Wade the entire time. And there were a lot of things here that I wish this was kind of a collaborative effort, because there's so much going on with the other characters. Like I would love to hear what it's like for the two otaku boys and being in Japanese culture, where being a shut-in is not considered very manly and being shunned for that. I want to hear about Artemis and what's it like being a woman and saying you're a woman on the internet. I think the revelation about H made me super sad.
Why is that?
Well, do you remember the Gamergate nonsense?
Oh yeah, of course.
So one of the things that they always said was there are no women or minorities on the internet. And what they really meant was the only way a woman or a person of color can be on the internet is if they pretend not to be. So that H's story, the fact that she is a woman of color who is queer and just immediately accepts that caveat to be in this world, like a lot of it didn't ring true for me, because two 17-year-old boys in a basement, Wade is probably talking a lot about women's tits and ass and stuff like that being super degrading, and it doesn't really fly for me that H would play along with that and enjoy it, Yeah,
it's an interesting question, because it's like he specifically references the fact that H had participated in some of the ogling with him, but it's also like, as a woman, you are going to be more sensitive to that kind of objectification, even if you are a queer woman. So I agree that part of me was just kind of like, okay. And I think what we're supposed to do is really think that Wade is more restrained than most dudes we know in real life. Like, we're supposed to assign Wade this slightly more chivalrous attitude about women than almost anybody that we've ever met who is his age. So it feels a little bit this is things like this are why I felt like he was a Mary Sue, because we were just supposed to accept that he's on like great behavior, even when he doesn't know that he's being watched by somebody else, sort of outside of the group that he thinks he's addressing. And, you know, yeah.
And I don't feel like his behavior, especially towards Artemis, really tracks with that.
Mm-hmm.
The way he stalks her for months and clearly doesn't take no when she says she's not interested. I mean, she is interested, but she is telling him no, and he's not taking it. This does not seem like the kind of kid who is going to be super respectful when talking about the female body in a basement alone with your best friend who you think is male.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And Artemis, like, that was something in particular that didn't ring true to me, was her receptiveness to Wade. Because as a woman, again, I cannot tell you, if I was in a position like Artemis where it's publicly known that I am interested in what is seen by many dudes as being the like male sphere, that I'm interested in comic books and video games and whatever, that I'm a amazing gunter, as they are called in this. And she doesn't ever reference being in a relationship with anybody. So it pretty much implied that she's single. As somebody who had just barely started to have a presence on the internet with my podcast on Song of Ice and Fire, the number of mouth-breathing neckbeards that I got in my inboxes and DMs and emails and whatever, trying to like low-key flirt with me or high-key, very high-key flirt with me, is beyond number. It's calmed down significantly since my divorce, but I cannot imagine that a dude like Wade, who just like really throws himself at her, would even be a ping on her radar. The only thing that could explain it is him beating her for the first key. And even that, it's not enough. I would be, if anything, more resentful because I had put, what she said, 5 weeks of work into getting it, and he beats me.
No kidding. And I don't see them ending up together.
No.
In my headcanon, she tells him to buzz the fuck off. Because how angry does she have to be? Because he beat her to the first key by pure luck. And it's also pure luck that he had an extra life.
Yep.
So, and it's her equipment that gets him through the door, and he gets all the credit and glory. Yeah, he shares the winnings, but he's still the king. And she's better at this than he is. She's smarter than he is. She may not be as daring with her own meat space life, with his whole jump into the enemy's den. But I mean, come on, like this feels like it should have been her story, not his.
I agree. Like, it's kind of ironic that he wrote Artemis, like he wrote her as being very unbelievable in the way that she reacts to Wade, but he wrote her otherwise as being very believable and interesting and fun, to the point where I want to read about her much more so than Wade, and yet he keeps on taking the stage. And Ren in the comments is saying, in my headcanon, Artemis and H end up together. I 100% thought that was going to happen. I really did. Up until the last second, I was like, okay, Artemis is going to wind up being gay. And I hoped for it. And then once we get to the point where they're winning, like the very last gate, I realized this isn't that kind of book. It's going to be a happy ending all around. He's going to win the contest. He's going to get the money. He's going to get the girl. I just was hoping against hope that part of the reason that she doesn't want to see him once they all get to Ogg's house is because she's afraid to like fess up to him that she's queer, and, you know, feeling like I kind of led this guy on for a long time, and now I'm going to have to like tell him this. But yeah, what was that?
Sorry, I had a speaker that was on, and I realized, if my phone goes off, it's going to annoy all your
super
podcast
loud.
listeners. So I turned it off.
So yeah, I find Artemis to be way more interesting. I find H to be way more interesting. And it's kind of funny because I see what you're saying about H in terms of like the Gamergate thing. I also, though, can't help but wonder how often that happens. I would be interested to hear. I appreciated that he decided to include a queer woman of color in the story at all, but it does feel like a very backdoor sort of thing to be like, well, she's like a white male most of the time, though, so whatever, you can get over
I don't
it.
doubt that there are a lot of women and people of color and queer people who play along so that they can survive in these online gaming spaces. What disappoints me is that that's not interrogated at all, and she never calls him out on anything that he's done.
It feels like she's too afraid to
once...
call him out because she's so worried about his reaction overall.
Right.
And I kind of wish that it was more that he was afraid of her reaction, that was the way it was handled. You know, once he realizes that she's a Black queer woman, that he's like rethinking all of the conversations they had and suddenly like, oh shit, maybe I was kind of out of line a few times and is she going to call me out? But he never even thinks about that.
She doesn't say anything about it. And if these two are as close as they're supposed to be, like, I feel like she would have sat him down and said, hey, if we're going to be friends going forward, things are going to change. And I can see someone playing along and pretending to be a white cis male. Sorry, there's motorcycles going by. I can't see them continuing to play along once the mask is off and they've been accepted for who they actually are.
Yeah, I think that, like, so him not even wondering, hey, maybe I tripped up some places and I wonder if she's going to be mad. The fact that doesn't even enter his mind, that just felt a little bit, because what he's thinking is, oh, I talked to her about women and she played along, but that's cool because she's actually gay. But he doesn't actually stop and think about that until later when she tells him that she's gay. And he's like, oh yeah, all right, that makes sense. So there's no like investigation on his part. And even if this isn't really the right time for them to have this conversation, one would think, because they're, you know, locked in this big thing and they're about to head over to Ogg's house, you'd think that there would be a sort of hint, or maybe her commentary about, you know, it's easier for me to get by in this game could be like peppered with, it's easier for me to get by in this game and you don't know what I have to hear while I'm doing it. You know, that kind of thing. Like, it's treated like it's a kind of get out of jail free card a little bit.
Yeah. And also the assumption that queer women talk about women the same way that straight men talk about women. And that is totally translated as a gay man. I get that a lot. It does not translate. So
yeah. It's just like I said, the kind of baggage that you have as a woman, whether you're queer or not, it's still going to be there. Like, because the world doesn't care at large when you're a woman, which way, especially as a queer woman, because that's sexualized in itself, you know? So it's just this sort of weird, like, oh, that would be so annoying. I'd be so fucking annoyed all the time. I just know it. But yeah, so it's sort of like a praise at the same time to be like, you know, these two side characters were so compelling that I want more of them than I did of the main character.
I wanted this to be George R.R. Martin style. Let's see it from all five of the top five perspectives going through and winning. And, you know, we didn't need that whole chapter about Pac-Man. He could have,
when he got that life
later. Yeah. It's, this would have been a truly amazing book if it's like Artemis's, or if it's H's perspective when she picks him up and then she hears secondhand about his adventures as an indent.
That would have been like, okay, so let's talk about that. So the whole premise of the book is that the world has gone to hell. There's way too many people. There's not enough resources. They've started stacking trailer parks vertically into these like towers in order to fit everybody, and getting electricity and all this stuff is like a real kind of, when I can sort of situation. When it's there, this is great. First of all, the scene in which, because as we said, he's the first one to get the copper key. And once he gets it, he's almost immediately followed by Artemis and then by H. When he is approached by IOI, it's IOI, right?
Yeah. Like I said, this time I was listening to the Kindle robot, so it was EOE.
Oh, that's amazing.
Did you see my Facebook post? Like when he said, I listened to all the stand-up of Bill Hicks, the robot made it sound like all the stand-up of Bell Hooks. And I was like, oh my God, is that a thing? Please be a thing.
Oh my God. I didn't see that. That's amazing. But yeah, so he gets this email and they're like, hey, we want to talk to you. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Because this was written a little bit before we really started to appreciate how much they can find out about us. Mm-hmm. But I'm supposed to accept that this technology that they have is so much more advanced than ours at this point, that they're able to do. And this is the kind of another sort of like loophole for me that can be a little tough, where I have to simultaneously accept that the enemy has this amazing technology while I basically headcanon why they aren't able to track you way more easily than they are. So he gets approached by them and, in my opinion, is very cavalier about just being like, no, even after they tell him, hey, we're going to blow up your whole complex. He's like, no, you're not going to do that. And I'm like, what makes you think that they wouldn't do that? We're talking about $60 billion. What on earth makes you think that they wouldn't do that? And of course they do. And for me, that was the first moment where I started to be like, all right, so Wade, buddy, listen, this was kind of he doesn't seem to have the kind of caution at the times that he needs it when he should. And he like bails because he has his hiding place, and he gets on a train and changes up his identity while he's on the train. But he has to use I think a retinal scan and a thumbprint in order to book the train ticket. And that was the problem for me, was he hadn't changed his identity yet. So wouldn't IOI notice a retinal scan for the guy that they just thought that they killed? And I guess one could say, like, well, maybe the place that he bought it wasn't an actual subsidiary of IOI. But we know now that that stuff doesn't really wind up mattering. Like, you can still get access to that sort of information. So it bothered me a little bit that he's as able to avoid them as he is without really like taking the kind of precautions. I would not be willing to use my thumbprint and retinal scan right after somebody tried to kill me and let them know that I'm still alive and walking around.
You could make the argument that, well, they thought he was dead and he signed off, so they weren't looking for him. And, signing on to Oasis is still run by the good guy company, even though we never meet a single person from that company other than Og. Mm-hmm. So you could make that, but these kind of little things just seem to pile up, like the fact that they can't get a location on H as she drives around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like, again, I'm willing to overlook it because the rest of the story is so engaging, but it's just really frustrating when this is something that happened in Daredevil as well. We have this like group that's supposed to be so on top of everybody and has eyes everywhere. And yet he's fighting in places where, like in hallways where there should definitely be security cameras, and there just happen to not be, even though there are clearly cameras in practically every other location. They just aren't where he happens to be right now. And I will let it go, but it feels difficult to establish that I need to be afraid, but not like too afraid, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of suspension of disbelief here. It's a lot of these things are kind of hand waved away, that Wade is so clever that he can find old laptops and fix them and sell them and live off that. The thing with his aunt and his her boyfriend seemed a little too perfect. That, oh yeah, here's a kid. He comes from, you know, it's a little bit of the problem I had at the very beginning of Harry Potter. Is like there are no redeemable characteristics for these people at all that are supposedly taking care of him. They are just fucking terrible, and it's always to me like, well, you are a teenage white kid. And you probably feel like the world is out to get you. Do not validate that feeling in teenage white kids. This is a dangerous thing.
It's kind of funny because it seemed almost like the author realized that once he had established his aunt and her boyfriend as being terrible, that he had to have somebody likable, or else we wouldn't care that they had been blown up. So I can't help but wonder if he just had it be them. And the editor was like, yeah, but we need to like give a shit about anybody who died. And he was like, all right, I'll throw in this old lady. You know, it felt very much like an afterthought. What's that?
It was still super sad though, afterthought or not. Like I felt really bad because we all know that little old lady who watches the Jesus channel all day and has no friends but her cats. Yeah. And once you like will call the infomercial line just to have someone to talk to.
Oh, bless. And she's willing to give him food and stuff, even though they're like everybody's food is really scarce.
Yeah.
I also, there was an expectation that got kind of set up for me where he moves to Columbus. He gets this apartment that he like totally tricks out to keep himself from being detected, to keep sound out, to keep himself from even like interacting with the outside world so that he can just 100% focus. And also because he's just scared of the outside world. And there is this exercise program that he's required, like he sets it up so that he has to log a certain amount of activity before he's even able to log into Oasis. So he drops all this weight and starts to actually get some muscle definition. I really expected there to be a live confrontation between him and some of the people from IOI because this author went to the trouble of letting us know that he had gotten fitter. Mm-hmm. And I guess what it is just so that we know that he's attractive enough that Artemis would be into him once she met him in person.
I took a different tack on that.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to go back to Gamergate. When women in gaming started complaining, it's like, look at all these women in gaming. They are always showing you their ass and their tits. The Gamergate.
We hate it. Mm-hmm,
look at this guy. He's wearing only a loincloth. And the women were like, that is not for us. That is for you so that you can feel awesome about the character that you are playing and that you look like that. And I felt this was another version of that, you know, you couldn't have the hero be a chubby kid who is, you know, smart and capable in his own way. He also has to be, you know, he has to overcome that as though that's a character flaw. And that's what bugged me about it. And like Artemis, I kind of wrote off. I think the implication is that she may have been heavier than her avatar, but not by much, but that she had a problem with it.
Can we talk about this?
Go for it.
Can we detour for a second here? Okay, so this is the thing that I really get irritated by. I'm not sure if you have been impacted by this because it's so different the way that it's handled for dudes. So Wade has been talked about as being chubby, and then he's talked about as having lost a bunch of weight and getting some muscle definition. But we never get like measurements. We never get height and weight, which we do get for Artemis at one point. And this is something that I brought up when I was recording Twin Peaks with Maggie, is that when you're a young girl and you're trying to learn what is, quote, acceptable, what is attractive, what is conventionally seen as ideal, you latch on to concrete measurements as much as you can in terms of goals for yourself, for what your measurements should be or how much you should weigh. And there's a point in Twin Peaks where Cooper very offhandedly mentions how Shelley, one of the female characters, probably doesn't even weigh 100 pounds. Which, holy shit, yes, she fucking does. She weighs probably about 130 pounds. But that kind of offhand comment that the writers probably barely think about would have been so damaging to me as a young girl. If I heard this woman was supposed to weigh less than 100 pounds, I would have completely fixated on that. I know I would have, because I have to consciously avoid doing that as a 32-year-old woman. So this fucking thing goes on about how Artemis is Rubenesque is the word that he uses. All
the
curves.
Euphemisms.
And he then says that her height is 5'6" and that she weighs like 163 pounds. Let's fucking talk for a second about how that is an inch taller than me and almost half my weight. That is not Rubenesque. That is probably a size 10, maybe. And he talks about how she created a line of like plus size, virtual clothing. 10 is not a plus size. 10 is still within straight sizes. You have to be 14 and up to be in a plus size. And one could say that, sure, models for plus clothing are often a size 8. So they don't technically fit in the plus clothing. But we're not talking about Artemis being a model. We're talking about her being plus size and creating this because she wants to wear it as a plus size girl, which she clearly would not be. 163 pounds is about 20 pounds less than I was when I was at like one of my most fit and muscular points in my life. It bothered me so much to read. Like, it's not in the big scale of things actually a big deal. It really isn't, really. But as somebody who has struggled with weight forever, as somebody who used what measurements were said in TV shows and stuff offhand as a kind of like goal setting for myself, I would see that this girl was considered chubby and see that she weighs 20 pounds less than I do, but is taller than me. And I would internalize the fuck out of that. I would have obsessed over it, to be honest.
Right. And it's just a failure of perspective, which is kind of why I wish he'd gotten together. Like, okay, I have these characters. I've got 2 Japanese dudes. I've got a queer black woman. I've got a Canadian woman who has a facial birthmark. Mm-hmm. Let's get some perspectives on what it would be like in this world. If not have them write it, at least like interview them. How do you feel about this? You know? It's just, again, I love this book. I will probably read it again before the year is out just for fun, but a lot goes unexamined here. I'm sorry. There's a motorcycle right outside my window and it's hot as balls out here. So I can't.
Yeah, it's like, I think you're right. The perspective thing, and just like, it's just, honestly, part of it is just being a dude and not really knowing what you're talking about when it comes to height and weight, because you go off of the bullshit measurements that like models give, which are not accurate or true. And it's just, it really is sort of like a evidence of like when a man writes a woman's perspective. I wouldn't be surprised if he focused a ton on how they looked, even if he wrote from their perspectives, you know, like more so than Wade. The most we know about Wade is that he's like got brown hair and brown eyes. Like, there's very little we really know about how he looks, and that he loses all the hair on his body because he's using this like Nair shampoo product in order to make sure that his haptic suit fits better.
Oh God, I forgot about that. That sounds so gross.
I love it.
His ass didn't clean out the shower drain either.
Oh God. Well, I assume that it would dissolve, right? Like, it's just filled with Drano, basically. I've
never used Nair, so I don't know if it actually.
I haven't either.
That, but it's as someone who has long, beautiful mane. Yeah, I spend a lot of time cleaning out the shower drain, and if you're cleaning all your body hair off, dude, yeah, you'd better invest in, like, you might need to get a delivery for some drain snakes or something. So.
I love that when he gets taken in to be an indent, that everybody else is like got no body hair also. that like it's just such a weird thing to imagine that like we're all still human beings, but we totally look like gray aliens because we've just decided that we don't need body hair anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What a weird thing. Like women are just going around with no hair on their heads either. I mean, I guess the implication is that we like interact so infrequently with the actual world that we aren't worried about what we really look like, because that's totally secondary to how we exist. Which gets into a whole other section of the story, really.
Yeah, another part of the story which was not explored is like the nature of online versus real relationships, and how real are they, and what is good and what is bad, and just like there's a lot of really meaty stuff that he could have dove into here, but that wasn't what he was interested in telling. So
yeah, it's kind of because it seems like he almost does it, because there's a point in the middle of the book where Wade is really struggling with depression because Artemis has stopped talking to him. He is kind of a dick to H, and H finally is just like, fine, fuck you, because he throws it in H's face that she wouldn't have gotten the copper key at all if he hadn't told her to like play on the opposite side. So there's a point in which he like talks openly about the fact that he isn't going outside anymore, that he's even covered up the windows so that he can't see what the weather is like, because even that is a little too distracting, that he bought a sex doll and was going into like these virtual brothels, which was way more than I expected this author to get into, considering like the overall family friendly nature of this storyline.
I think that is a rich vein for mining. There is a whole fucking Black Mirror episode where you meet someone online, and then like you can wear your gloves and your visor and fuck a doll and be fucking this person. And like, oh my God, there are so many stories that could be told there that would be really rich and interesting. And it's a throwaway thing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because he treats it like, I did it, and he says, I think that he lost an entire week. Like he doesn't search for the egg or do anything for a week. And then he comes to his senses, realizes he's been totally distracted, and like throws the doll away and stops with it. Which for me, I like that he touches on that in terms of like the story at all, but just suddenly having the willpower to like throw away a fuck doll just because you're like, oh, it's distracting. I was a little bit like not buying that one, especially when he's supposed to be what, like 17, 18?
I think he's 18. I think he's a full-fledged adult so that things wouldn't be weird.
Well, so yeah, that was something that I was like, that like it's sort of a stupid measurement, but it was moments like that contributed to me thinking that he was Mary Sue. Just like, oh, I've recognized the temptation here and I've overcome it in a week. And I'm like, don't buy it. Sorry. And the online relationship between him and Artemis, her concerns about, oh, that's right, Ashley M. Peterson saying he turns 18 because there was a weird thing about him being able to vote. I forgot about that because they have the Oasis election, and then they have the actual American election, which he just doesn't participate in because it's pointless. But what was I saying?
Did you get the Will Wheaton name drop there and Cory Doctorow?
Apparently Will Wheaton is the audiobook narrator. How weird would that be? To be reading this out loud and read your own name in life as like the president of this. That's so weird.
Yeah. And I gotta say, I got a lot of Steve Jobs from Halliday.
Yeah, I think he makes that comparison directly, doesn't he?
He might.
Yeah.
I know he did to Bill Gates, but I don't know about Steve Jobs.
Because I think he compares Halliday and Og as with Jobs and, oh my God, what's the other guy's name? The one that's the head now. No, the two guys who work together at Apple.
I have some feelings about Steve Jobs, so yeah, he was a terrible person.
Oh, he was a huge dickhead, but That's the thing is like
Steve
people
Wozniak.
accomplish. Thank you, Wozniak. Thank you. Jesus, drive me nuts. But yeah, that's the thing is that I kind of feel like Apple's products have fallen off a little bit. And I feel like the reason that they were as good as they were was because he was as insufferable as he was and as pushy as he was. But anyway, I forgot what I was saying though, because I had started saying something about the Mary Sue aspect and him overcoming the sex addiction thing. And I like completely lost track of thought because of the age thing. Ugh, that's so annoying because I really had something that I wanted to say and now I forgot.
Should we go back to talking about that? So he's a Mary Sue because
it was the relationship thing. Artemis's concerns about what they would be like together in real life are treated as just her being self-conscious, when in fact, I can say as somebody who is with somebody in real life now, who I initially met online and had a purely long distance, never met you in person relationship with, I'm lucky that it worked out the way that it did. But most people that I have met in person after getting to know them online, it has been absolutely nothing like what it was like online. And so it frustrates me that they meet in the last like 10 pages of the last chapter. And it's just sort of like hand waved as, oh, of course they were great together and they were super happy and whatever. And it's just not only about how people look. That's not all it is. How somebody behaves when they're able to filter everything they say to you through 3 lenses before it ever gets to you. It's not just them speaking. It's them thinking about what they're going to say, typing it out, rereading it to themselves, then stopping and being like, or the way that they have it here, where even H is able to use like software to alter her voice. One could think that there would be software to alter all kinds of things about the way that you speak to people. It just, like you said, that's not the story that he wants to tell. So I understand that he doesn't get into it a little bit more and he just wants it to be a happy ending. But I wish that he acknowledged any sort of doubt on the part of Wade, because Wade is dead certain that they're going to be great together and that she has nothing to worry about and that she's only concerned about her appearance. And it's so much more than that. At the dance, she says, like he says, I'm in love with you. And she says, you don't even know me. And she isn't wrong. Like, I understand that they had tons and like hours essentially of conversations. And in some ways, starting off long distance can be better because you aren't blinded by just fucking all the time, which can definitely happen in an in-person relationship. So I get that that is an advantage in some ways, but still he doesn't know her, you know? So I don't know. I just wish that Wade had really admitted to himself that she may have a point, and it never seems like he ever doubts at all.
I totally agree. So we've talked a lot about the characters and the things about these characters. How do you feel about all the 80s-ness?
This, like I said, wet dream. Like, this is somebody who has tons of knowledge about 80s trivia and just fantasizes about what if this was actually useful in any way.
I'm going to correct you for 1 second.
Okay.
He has a lot of encyclopedic knowledge of 80s male trivia. Because all of the things I love about the 80s, like there was a vague mention of Heathers, and that's it. So where the fuck is Belinda Carlisle? Or
anything that has
Madonna,
to do with ladies is something that Artemis, like what's the name of her planet that she like has her little asteroid? It's called
I forget.
Oh my god, I can't remember the name. It's the female rocker. Oh, that's gonna drive me nuts now. I should have looked this up. No. Benatar. It's called Benatar.
That's right, yeah.
And I think that there's something about Wonder Woman or something at one point, which isn't technically even 80s. So that was kind of an odd thing, but I guess it's just a comic book thing. So yeah, it seemed like anything that had a female slant at all, he just threw into the Artemis pile.
Right. The second time going through it, I'm like, well, it really bothered me the first time how much everything seems to be steeped in the 80s. And the only answer I can really come through with is at first I was like, why does the whole world give a shit about the 80s all the time? And I get that this contest is a big thing, but not everyone is into the contest. So why is there no other pop culture? The only answer I can come up with is because it's from Wade's perspective, and that's all that he cares about. So, but that's not really satisfying to me. Like, there's some vague mentions of like World of Warcraft and things that happened in the 90s and the aughts, but it just seems like the whole world revolves around, this hunt for the egg, and this is the sole purpose of everyone in this universe. And if they're not a part of it, they're just, they're either indents or they're meth dealers in the stacks. So it's a very selfish way for the protagonist to look at the world, and it's another really unexplored area. So
yeah, like I could believe that most of the pop culture was dominated by retro things if this were the first couple years in which the contest had begun, but it starts with 5 years behind them, or 4 years at that point, I think, right?
Something like that.
So that was the thing that kind of bugged me, is that I totally believe when there's something of this scale, $90 billion on the line, and everybody is living already in the world in which this contest is taking place, I could completely believe that 80s pop culture begins to dominate everything, no matter how old you are, temporarily. But then they reach a point where so many people have lost interest in this contest altogether, and it's sort of treated as a joke that anybody's even still trying. And that's when I start to be like, well, and once he's mentioning that, there are people that are dressing a certain way and whatnot, and he only just found the copper key, the resurgence hasn't been going on long enough for everybody to like immediately jump back into that. So right. I get what you're saying. I think that you're right, though, that it's mostly because it's from his perspective and he only mentions what people are wearing or talking about when it's something that he is interested in, which is almost always something related to the hunt.
There's also the notable lack of a lot that's going on in the Oasis. We get a lot about his school, which I thought was super cool. How does, if you went to school in Second Life, what would it look like? That was cool. But, and there's some vague mentions of hunting orcs and kobolds, but and then he goes into, the magic and the technology, but not a lot of that is really, he doesn't dive in very deep. And this, as someone who loves games and just doesn't have the money or time to play them all the time anymore, there's a lot of fascinating things going around with game mechanics and what the world of VR would look like if everyone was gaming all the time. I think it would be super cool. Where does telekinesis pop in, and where do the adventure games that are not about combat come in? What does this virtual world look like? Give me something, buddy. So
see, I feel like he did get into that to a degree. He talks about the different places that magic is allowed to happen and that it's disabled in certain sectors and whatever, which I feel like addresses some of that. And that there are areas which is just basically hangout areas and people aren't engaging in combat at all. It's just shopping or hanging out, and that, which I liked that aspect of it, in that it's sort of a peek into in some ways, obviously there's the comparison to be drawn between Oasis and Facebook being the most crude version, but Facebook is making strides towards people being able to shop within the app, not even having to leave and go to somebody else's third-party site, or playing games within it, which they're less successful with. And the little details that he talks about with when they're taking classes, and that their headsets and whatnot have restrictions on them so that they aren't able to pull up anything else to do and space out during class, or they're not allowed to leave before it's over or whatever. I really liked that kind of stuff because I just was glad, to be honest, that he's able to do a minor hack at one point where he pulls up his a movie screen when he's doing IT work, and so he can space out in between waiting on people. But I was glad that he isn't constantly able to hack everything so that he can just live his life however the fuck he wants when he's on Oasis, because that
Well,
would have
that's in the
gotten
end.
super tiring to me. Yeah, it is. And I forgave it in the end because it felt almost like at the beginning, he didn't do it purely because he was trying to be respectful. Like, I could, but that's just shitty, so I'm not gonna. And then towards the end, he's like, okay, gloves are off because I know that you're gonna do whatever the fuck, so will I. The indent concept, what do you think of that? Because that was pretty close to home for
That
me.
scared the shit out of me.
Right.
And not because, and I wonder if he was trying, like, I've said a lot of kind of mean things about him. Like, I've not given him a whole lot of credit, but this really strikes true for me. This is something that kind of does exist already. I mean, debtors' prisons are making a comeback, and, you know, they pile on fees and your debts never go down. And just, I went with a friend who was being sued by her ex the other day, and just going into the courts, just how disrespectful the courts are to people's time. Like, you've got to, it took all of, honestly, this could have been solved with an email chain. Like, the case was supposed to be dismissed, and as long as she had no arrests, they could have checked to see if she had any arrests and sent her an email, said, your case is dismissed. No, you shouldn't have made us wait in the courtroom for 4 hours for her case to come up. And just piling on that, the way that, especially in the South, they're starting to tack on fees, and you have to pay a fee every time you get drug tested for parole. And they don't really care about the drug test results. They care about you paying these fees, and these fees keep going up. And if you go destitute, you get your ass thrown in jail. It's not, it doesn't seem like that big of a leap that companies will start to say, well, instead of selling your debt, we're going to throw you in this indentured servitude life where you're going to work for us and until you die. So,
yeah, agreed. Like, I've been reading a lot recently about the cycle with which, you know, people get a ticket, they're not able to pay it. It's programmed so that ticket doubles if you don't pay it on time within a month. And then if it's still not paid, then your license is taken away, and people continue driving without a license because they have to get to work. But if they ever get pulled over, then they cannot even go to work, and then they lose their job, and then they really can't pay their bill. And it's so easy when you don't have any kind of savings to pull from in an emergency situation to completely go downhill within like a month and basically be out on your ass without a house. So yeah, the whole thing with the indentured servitude, with especially the orientation where they're like basically lying straight to your face that you're ever going to be able to pay this off. That for me was the part that was like hard to read, because he's like, this was all a joke, of course. After they subtracted all of the fees and the housing and board and everything for vision and dental and whatever, you never paid them back. In fact, you started to owe them more because they were paying all of your like life coverage, and that some people didn't even mind because they would at least have a roof over their heads and food to eat. I think that part hurt more than anything, was that like, yeah, this horrible thing is happening and it's preferable in some ways to how people would be living otherwise. So they are just like, yeah, I guess. Oh man, rough. That was a bleak section.
And I have to call bullshit. There is no way you are hacking your way out with the fucking volume buttons on your television.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was totally willing to go with it.
There's a keyboard so that you can find the episode of the stupid corporate sitcom that you're looking for. It would have been really easy to write something in, but that was like, it was on the edge of Mary Sue for me this whole time. Because like you said, he wasn't that great at hacking. He used the resources that he had. He didn't do anything that was particularly unbelievable until he gets there and manages to do this with the fucking volume buttons. Like, have you ever tried, like, it's hard enough when you're on Netflix and you don't have a keyboard and you're trying to enter your fucking password. How the hell are you going to hack 10 petabytes worth of corporate secrets onto a damn flash drive when you have a total of 6 buttons to work with?
Well, and that was the thing. Like, I was initially okay with the volume thing to access everything, because he writes it so that he got the information at an auction website from somebody who purposefully built a backdoor into the system in order to be able to sell the key to the backdoor later on. Okay, fine. That's fine. But yeah, once he gets into people's files and he's copying them, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't, again, with the technology thing, any corporation worth its salt that has files of fucking actual cam footage of them murdering somebody, and they just have it in somebody's file, and they don't have any protections on it to keep you from making copies. You're just able to go in there and make a copy. Oh, okay. That was when I was just like, yeah, fine. Like it's again, the suspension of disbelief and me wanting so badly for this to have a happy ending that I just sort of hand waved it the same way that the author did and was just like, yeah, sure, fine. But yeah, really, when you stop and look at it, it does kind of fall apart.
It did remind me of a YouTube video I saw once where, I don't know if you know this, but toasters now have USB ports inside them. So you can actually, like, it's so that they can do whatever software they do so that it doesn't catch fire. But you can take it apart, connect the USB, and it technically works as a keyboard input. So there's this little tutorial where he says, okay, I'm taking off my toaster, I'm plugging it in, here's where I go into command prompt, and I map the A key to the toaster button. And then it cuts to him with like 6 toasters playing Doom. Not very well.
Wait.
But like he said, okay.
How?
So he's got, you know, you've got up, down, left, right, and he has 4 toasters, and you pull down the thing, is one is up, one is down, one is left, one is right, and like one is shoot, and one is reload. And he's just, he's not playing very well, but it did give me a little chuckle to think about that. But like, the complexity of
Obama's spying on us from our microwaves, so, you know.
Yeah. If the microwave is that up to date, why do I have to change it for daylight savings time?
Oh, daylight savings time is just a big scam, just overall. Like, just don't bring up daylight savings time to me. It's never going to end well. This conversation is going nowhere. I know that there was other things that I wanted to discuss.
So we want to discuss the actual hunt because we've not really gotten into that at all.
That's true. Yeah. The hunt feels so secondary to, like, in comparison to, like, the statements that he's making overall. So the first one is on his school planet, which is super convenient because he's so broke that he can't afford the transport fees to go anywhere else. So
do you think Halliday thought of that he wanted to have people who couldn't travel anywhere?
I would love to believe that that's what it was about. That would be pretty great if that were the thought process behind it, because Halliday, you know, he's written that he was on the spectrum for Asperger's, and they say that he grew up in an abusive household, but they don't really talk about financially too much how he was doing. He just kind of grew up like a modest lower middle class neighborhood, really. So it would be kind of cool if that were part of what he took into account when he programmed the whole thing. It is kind of funny though that he programs it so that it's in a underground like mausoleum tomb, whatever, crypt. That is exactly modeled after the one in the D&D manual, which I thought there were going to be some surprises, but it's exactly like it is in the book, so that if you have it, you can just avoid all the traps and everything. That was another thing.
Someone in the chat, can you Google the Tomb of Horrors and give us a picture? If I Google, I'm going to waste bandwidth because my computer's running on its last little bit. But I want to see what that Tomb of Horrors looks like. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. But that was something that kind of bothered me, that when he gets down there and he, you know, meets Artemis on the way out, she says something about how he's going to have to like go through all of the traps and everything again, when he actually avoided a lot of them on the way in because he had the book. And one would think that her having the book was how she discovered it a month and a half before him. And yet she talks about it like she doesn't have the same information that he does to avoid all of that, which I found a little bit confusing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's
just, I don't know. It's sort of like this author, he wanted Artemis to be like at the level that Wade is to get his admiration, but never actually really threatening. There's only one moment in the middle of the book where she's threatening because she gets there before him, but he overtakes her quickly enough that it sort of falls back again. Which, that's kind of like the truth. I just feel like I got like a fundamental truth about like misogyny.
Yeah, it's twice as hard to go half as far. And what do you know? The skills that we value are what you, Gen Xer asshole, happen to be really good at when you were a teenager.
Right.
So playing Joust and knowing every word in War Games and Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which I hate that movie so much.
Oh no, I like it. It's not like my favorite, but yeah.
I'm sorry. It's been overdone for me so much. And there was actually a guy in my high school who, like, for weeks he would walk around pretending to be on a horse, and everything he said was lines from that. And he got the lead in the school play. And I'm like, dude, like, no, oversaturation. This is never happening again. So,
I mean, it's not just that he like knows it because he he researched all of this. He watched all these movies a million times because he thought it was going to be relevant. He just happened to be right. So I can forgive a lot of that, but like that fundamental thing where I want a girlfriend who's almost as good as me with like regarding everything that I'm interested in, but not really enough to ever actually challenge me. And so that I'm able to save her in some way in the end every time. That really came up for me a few times. And I thought once, what's that?
Sorry.
Well, I was just saying, I thought when she comes out ahead of him, having gotten the Jade Key and getting the gate, I thought that it was going to turn out that Artemis was going to come out ahead of him and he would be there kind of trailing after her, still admiring her and just barely keeping up. So I was a little bit disappointed that he winds up not only catching up, but beating her out for the next key and everything. And that in the end, again, he goes in alone because he's the only one with an extra life. And, you know, he brings everybody back. So
again, because, and this is author insertion, because he's really good at something that the author really loves, which is Pac-Man.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But what it reminded me of was, remember the Cool Girl speech in Gone Girl?
Yep.
So there was one key component that was left out of that speech. They don't want a girlfriend who loves video games. They want a girlfriend who loves to watch you play video games, which is a very important distinction. And that's what I feel was going on here, that this was Artemis would be very capable and clever, but non-threatening. And he was clearly superior and he wants her support. Even with all of this stuff, she doesn't really seem to ever consider him competition. And not in she never really seems to take in that if this guy wins, you lose.
Well, she does like in the middle when she cuts off contact with him, because she's the one that's like, okay, you know what? We've gotten too friendly and now we're losing sight of the fact that we are each other's competition. Mm-hmm. So she does in like it sort of feels, what's the word I'm looking for? It feels like technically she does. In the script, in the words she says she does. But it doesn't really feel that way. Like I understand what you mean. Yeah. Because it seems like as soon as she steps ahead of him, once I think what is the name of the first Japanese guy who gets thrown off his balcony?
Daijo.
I lost track. Once he's dead, it seems like it sort of wipes the slate clean for all of them in terms of like having this animosity that they had that had driven Wade to being really isolated. It's sort of a wake up call, and that's narratively very convenient. So now we all have to be on the same side, you know, where I kind of want, I said, I just wanted Artemis to win. I just did. And
I wanted H to win, but that was just, that was just me. So
once, like, I didn't want H to win initially because I thought it was just his dude friend. So I was just like, ugh, whatever, you know. I honestly did think that H was going to turn out to be a woman, but I thought that it was just going to be like a white straight woman, and that Artemis was going to wind up being gay. So things got kind of turned around on their heads in the end there.
Right. Yeah, but there's the fact that this is a competition. Like I can't see Artemis having anything but years of grudge, because Wade wins by being so fucking lucky. Right? He happens to be good at joust. He happens to run into that stupid extra life thing.
But he admits that it's luck, so it's okay.
Yeah. It's
like
not.
That's how it's kind of played, you know, that he's like, oh, well, I acknowledge that it's just luck. So, and it's kind of funny because like the way we're talking about it, we're acting like we really are like contemptuous of the book. I'm not, like, we both love this book, you know?
Yeah, that's why I opened with that disclaimer. I love this book. I'm going to read it again the next rainy day when I have nothing better to do. But like, I want so much more from this book. Like,
it really feels like, I think that part of why I'm in love with it is really its potential to open other doors than the book itself in a lot of ways.
And the final fight scene.
Yes, which is super,
that was
super
goddamn
fun.
Wicked.
Mecha Godzilla.
This is some kid playing with all his action figures at once. Fuck canon, fuck continuity, fuck which property, if it's Marvel or DC or Ultraman or whatever, they're all going to have a giant battle. This is, I don't know if you've ever heard the song, The Ultimate Showdown. It's the stupidest thing you've ever heard. It's just about all your favorites just getting in a giant fight. And this is what was going on. And I read this, I think I read this scene twice the first time, probably 3 times this time. So It was just, it's so much adrenaline. And I didn't even know half the characters that are going on. I'm a little mad that Mechagodzilla was on the bad guy's side, because Godzilla, I think that's a really bad rap. So
I thought, because, you know, when he comes out and he's got Mechagodzilla, at first you don't see that that's what he has, and you just hear everybody go, oh shit. And that was when I was like, does he have Cataclysm? Is that the name of it? The bomb that kills everybody in a whole sector?
Cataclysm, I think.
Cataclysm. That I thought that was what was coming right then. And I was super relieved that it was Mechagodzilla. And then the Cataclysm comes into play like 10 minutes later. And I was like, oh, fuck. Cause yeah, that chapter just ends with, and then we all died. And I was like, I'm sorry, what now? And yeah, like you said, the luck thing with him being the only one that has an extra life, despite the clues being what led him to finding that extra life. It's a little hard for me to believe that anybody is following the same pattern of clues as he is and isn't being led to some of the same places as him so that they wind up also getting an extra life. Because I think it was something like 80% of the population in Oasis was in that one sector at that point. So, you know, there should be a good chance that anybody anywhere has also found one. I mean,
it was super obvious. I wish he had not put in that the high score was in there, that he just did it on a lark, because that seems super fucking obvious that you need to play a perfect game of Pac-Man to get something important. So it feels like a lot more people would have that if that clue was sitting there on the screen.
Right. Yeah. And I kind of thought that there was something, and I should find that scene again, but there was something in the way that he found it that indicated that there's probably more than one place that you could find an extra life, because I feel like the thing was, it said that it was out of order on it, or there was something about, I should have found it. I should have marked it. But so that likelihood of him being the only one goes down even further if you accept that there's other places that potentially could, you know, have one of these little Easter eggs in it. I keep not wanting to say Easter egg because it's like the whole point of the thing, and I just feel like I'm playing right into his hands, but there it is.
I'm sorry, what fucking good is an extra life if all your shit is gone?
Then you don't have to work on leveling everything up again.
No, I mean, like, if I get killed by a herd of rampaging elephants, And then suddenly I'm resurrected wearing nothing but t-shirt and jeans and have no weapons on. I'm still in the middle of fucking herd of elephants. You know?
I guess it depends on what your talents are. Like, do you lose your powers also? Because if you're like a wizard, even if you're in jeans and a t-shirt, I don't know. Like, maybe you could still like hightail it the fuck out of there with some magic flying spell or something. I don't know.
And this is another reason I was a little disappointed with the lack of ingenuity in his game mechanics, is that a couple of years ago they came out with a game called DayZ, or I think it's pronounced Days, but it's spelled Daisy.
Okay.
It's a zombie game and it's a mod of another game. But basically the trick is that when you die, you lose everything, right? There is no save point and everything. So you have to be and it's player versus player as well. So it's super terrifying that you have to go find a gun and survive these zombies and survive other players who are trying to kill you for whatever you happen to have on you. Right. And it's just the fact that death meant something beyond I lose a few minutes in my checkpoint was really kind of novel. And so I'm like, okay, well, he's worked this game mechanic. What other game mechanics has he worked in? Like, what are the survival horror tropes that exist in this world? Like, if you've ever played Mass Effect, it's got a really great way of using telekinesis as a weapon, which is super creative and super fun and making shit blow up just because you fucked with the gravity fields around. And it's, like, we didn't get a whole lot of that, right? Yeah. We got a lot of people wandering around with swords and casting fireball and shit. Mm-hmm. So this is the least of the criticism I'm going to throw at him, but it felt like a failure of imagination here.
I have to be honest, though. I'm kind of because there is such a door that you open when you make anything possible that I worry that you kind of go into this infinity loop of, well, then they could have outdone it by doing this. Well, then they could have done this. Well, what if they did? And you sort of wind up in this endless cycle of one-upping into infinity because you can do literally anything. And even though in some ways that's technically supposed to be the draw of Oasis, I appreciate that it feels atmospherically like he set some parameters just in order for my brain to be able to cope with having some limitations. You know what I mean? I get what you mean. I just think narratively it would be really difficult for me to follow or focus if I knew that they could kind of do whatever the fuck to get out of everything, but I do get what you mean. I just think that for me, that was more helpful than anything.
That's totally fair. It's just, I'm one of those super nerds who's always like looking at like, what do all these smart people have to say about these new game mechanics? I think, have you heard of Depression Quest? Mm-mm. So Depression Quest is, it was created by Zoe Quinn, one of the initial targets of Gamergate. And basically it's a text adventure game. And you have depression, right? So it's like a day in your fucking life. What are you going to do tonight? You're going to call your girlfriend. You're going to play with your cat. But what it does is like you have all these options at the end of every screen, but some of them are crossed out. So it says, well, you could do those things. And the worse your depression gets, the more items are crossed off and the more it kind of snowballs into this thing. So it really demonstrates how depression kind of overrides what is physically possible for you and say it's not worth it and it's too hard. And you just physically can't do these things that shouldn't be that hard. And just in the 20 teens, I wanted some exploration of what video gaming means in this new millennium. So it's 50 years later. What are the cool things? So that was mild disappointment on my part, but sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's fine. I understand what you're saying, but yeah, like I was saying, for me, I almost get distracted by that kind of thing. And it's something that it's sort of funny because in Harry Potter, I feel like J.K. Rowling sort of realized that she had maybe set things up so that was a thing. And she started to retroactively like set parameters with, there's a law that Hermione cites at one point that says that you can't create something out of nothing. You can just create more of something that exists, things like this, which, it's late enough in the series that you feel like this is a pretty important law that we should have heard of by now. But I'm guessing that Rowling just realized that a lot of the problems that they're going to run into later, for example, being on the road in a tent with no food, aren't going to seem like real problems when you've got a wand that can do whatever the fuck.
Right.
So I think that, I kind of feel like he probably was like, "Ooh, I can't give them like every single way out of this." So, and especially once he starts writing Wade so that he's suddenly super hacker, you kind of like fuck yourself as an author that way too, so that it feels like, well, I can't like believably say anything about him not doing this or that because I've already proven that he's able to do a lot of shit he shouldn't.
Right.
The one thing that he really defines is simply that Halliday has disabled the ability to record certain things or to talk to people when you're inside certain areas or whatever. So yeah. And then the Monty Python thing, that was what the second, was that the final gate?
Yeah, that was the final
right?
gate. That was the second level in the final gate.
And when he goes in there, some of the Sixers are also going in and they're all suddenly on camera. So everybody is watching all of them the whole time. Right. And I like the detail that he puts in, which is that eventually other like game developers pick up on this idea of being able to be inside your favorite movie and they just like run with it because hell yeah, I would totally want to do that. Home Alone, anybody? Hi, I'd win forever.
I don't understand you ever.
I like Christmas.
I watch Die Hard. So
I do. I watch Die Hard every year. I watch Die Hard usually like twice every Christmas, and I watch Home Alone like 4 times every Christmas.
There would be a lot of movies where I would like not touch things that you clearly should not touch. I was listening to a podcast and they said this is an all black podcast. And one of them says, "Oh, that's my favorite movie in that genre." They were talking about Prometheus. And the other two look at him and they're like, "What fucking genre are you talking about?" And he says, "The genre of white people touching stuff that should well be left alone."
That's fair. Oh my God. That was like my biggest thing when I watched that movie. What are you doing? You fucking weirdo. Don't touch things with your ungloved hand.
The walls are bleeding. We should leave.
Right? Yeah. Let's just go. Anyway. Bless you. I know that there was another thing that I wanted to bring up in this. We have the trailers piled high. We have the this is one of the first indicators that I'm like kind of going to get a little irritated with the voice of this character, which is wouldn't it be great if somebody just sat you down when you were a kid and was like, "Hey, so we ruined everything and the planet sucks and God is a joke and whatever." And I was like, all right, buddy. And once on like, it sort of was a win-lose with that because on the one hand, his voice was insufferable. On the other hand, it framed everything so that I knew what lens I was going to be seeing the world through for the rest of the book. And so I was like, all right, so I have to be prepared for this to be who I'm hearing everything from. Mm-hmm. I just really, although there's a lot of problematic stuff, I expected it to be a little bit worse than it was. He totally pleasantly agree. Surprised me with that. So
it's all the problematic stuff that we've brought up is like, I would not have finished it if it wasn't such a good book and so engaging and just so much adrenaline all the time. It's very accessible and it doesn't spend time making you think too hard, which, let's be honest, is an art form in itself. Yes.
It is welcome. Also, I appreciate that he doesn't make you spend too much time going through the mechanics of every single aspect of all of the levels, because like I was concerned when he first goes into the crypt that we were going to have to like hear about him fighting every monster and the whole thing. And it's just like a very cursory paragraph of just like, I got through trapdoors and whatever. And then eventually there was a lich. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. We didn't need to do that. I'm so glad. And same happened with all of them. Like just, I didn't feel like I had to sit through a bunch of like masturbatory gamer nonsense in order to get to the part that I actually cared about. So
if
good
you're
on you.
trying
that,
to
buddy.
avoid masturbatory gamer nonsense, this is probably not the book for you.
But when it was, I cared about it. You know, there's just is a point for me where I'm like, I don't give a shit about this anymore.
Right.
I just want to hear about the part where you won. Did you win? Okay, cool. Let's move on.
Yeah.
You know, like.
And Wade does win. And the ghost of Halliday says that you are now king of everything. And another thing that goes unexplored is he has the self-destruct button.
Yeah, I kind of thought that there might be a sequel to this book that he was like thinking of because of that addition, you know, like
I honestly
don't know.
felt a little bad for Wade because there's no indication that you're allowed to have more than one avatar at a time, and playing on God mode is not very much fun.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Like, where's
I
the
don't
shot?
know. I don't know though. Like, isn't it? I kind of think it's still fun, but you know.
In a PvP, I don't know. I could just create anything.
If you're God mode,
would-
I bet you could have more than one avatar. I bet you anything that goes
Okay.
along with like being God. You could have 7 avatars. This is for formal occasions. This one's for fighting. This one's for shopping.
I would totally.
This one's my
have
dinner
avatars.
avatar.
Ugh.
Yeah, those kinds of details, like about people being able to like bid on certain items and only specific types of items and things like that, I found kind of interesting. The weird
That's
moment.
a real thing, actually.
Oh
Bidding
yeah,
on,
I
like-
know. But it's just like it's not something like in this kind of gaming setup when it's actual like, you know, because the whole VR thing. There are things that I sort of take off the table that I know exist in games, but for some reason I don't translate in my head as existing in this kind of game.
Mhm.
And of course it would. It doesn't make sense that it wouldn't. But there's like a point where I just sort of stop in terms of what I think is possible. And same with the being in the indents with he's doing the like IT assistance. And he sees people's avatars when he's talking to them and advising them on how to fix things. For some reason, I thought he was just going to hear them or just going to like use a chat box. But instead, it's like they're sitting across the desk from him as their avatar, which is hilarious to me because they're like troll. What's the first one? It's like Fat Cock 69 or something is the first
Something
person
like
that he waits on.
It's- Yeah. I have a story about something like that where one of my brother's friends turned on Final Fantasy and like started a bunch of new games and just I think he named the main character Bob Big Cock and the next one was Little Dick and the next one was Tits, and he did that for like every save slot, and I can delete them, but I'm like, why did you fucking do this, dude?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you so terrible? So yeah, that seems kind of true to life. So
Oh my God. That's so annoying. Yeah. It's kind of the joke thing. Like Owen says that he wants to create characters with names like that sometimes just because he misses being 12 years old. Him and Trevor, who is one of his best friends, I don't remember the game that they would play. It was like one of those server games. I think it was for Star Wars, but they created female avatars and they got bombarded with free stuff and they weren't ready for it. Like they just thought it was going to be kind of fun to mess with guys, but they weren't ready for how sad it was because dudes would like immediately DM them when they logged in and then send them a free thing and then be like, so, hey, did you get my present that I sent you? And they were just like getting so much of that he said that they both played like as the female characters for about two days and then they couldn't do it anymore. They just were like too bummed out by it. And I was like, yeah, well, there you are. And it's like the kind of thing,
that
well,
should
it
be an
sounds like
episode
getting,
of Catfish.
I know that other guys have done it, you know,
Uh-huh.
and it's the kind of thing that a guy would be like, without experiencing it, would think, well, I want free stuff. That sounds awesome. But it's like, no, it's not just free stuff. It's like the incessant pings of people trying to like, just let me live. So because there is a kind of through line that maybe Artemis is actually a dude named Chuck, a 65-year-old dude named Chuck, and Wade keeps like bringing that up. A teeny tiny bit wanted that to be real, not gonna lie, because that would have been hilarious.
Not gonna lie either. That would have been fine with me.
That would have been an amazing plot thread to have, like him having to suddenly cope with dude to be. I wanted Artemis to be Sorrento. Ren in chat just said I wanted Artemis to be Sorrento. That occurred to me. That
really?
was
That never occurred to me.
Yeah, when she pops in, when they blow up the trailers and then he calls the meeting in H's basement, I thought that it was possible that Artemis was actually Sorrento catfishing in order to get other information because she realized that he's still alive, or he, being Sorrento, realized that he's still alive and is hoping to get him. And, sure enough, he says later that he told her his real name and everything. So it would have worked if they had decided to do that. And I was so suspicious for a while that she actually worked for them or was Sorrento himself. A little bit of a missed opportunity that nobody in the top 5 was a Sixer in reality. Because they made it kind of easy that the Sixers all have the same avatar, so you can immediately tell who's who, which is real convenient and like kind of not really. But, it's fine. Whatever. But yeah, Ashley Ann Peterson saying the same thing. I thought she might be working for IOI. Yeah, same. I was suspicious of everybody, even H, especially when the comics fell off the shelf in one of their meetings. That was another thing that kind of made me think, well, maybe it's H. Maybe H set up this room so that people can have invisible avatars in here and just didn't say anything to Wade, Right. But then we find out that it was the all-powerful Ogden. It felt very like the whole thing about this book was that it feels kind of childlike in that everything that's like seems sinister is sinister to the nth degree, and everything that is good without question. And the people who are on your side with like billions of dollars at their back to help you out.
Yeah. There's a lot of assumptions here that nobody at the Oasis Corporation would sell and any information. Nobody has gone diving into the code looking for Easter eggs. Nobody nobody has tried to wrestle his estate out of his hands and get it. He mentions I'm a huge dork for monetary theory. I know that's the most boring thing that anyone could ever give a shit about, but $90 billion in a place where currency is in wild fluctuation and doesn't mean a goddamn thing. $90 billion could very well be nothing very soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is jumping ahead for years. And so, it sounds like a lot now, but you don't know what the hell happened to the economy. Well, you do know what happened to the economy and that it pretty much collapsed. So
right. So apparently there was no inflation there. And but, he makes mention of the fact that credits are really the only stable, viable currency that there is. So I kind of want to hit him over the head and say, okay, well, you've just established governments can't be trusted, therefore their currency can't be trusted, and it's not a viable investment. Why is the prize in this dollar amount? Why is it not a credit amount that is coded to be 90 billion or whatever 90 billion would be worth at the time that it is done? That make any sense?
No, I get what you mean. But again, everything is so basic, and I don't mean that in an insulting way, but you know what I mean in this book, that there comes a point where I'm like, if he explained any of the things that we're complaining about more than he did, it wouldn't have suited the whole rest of the book. So we'd have had to rewrite everything else, this is the kind of story that if you try and actually make it work, it's going to be so much less fun to read because he's going to have to explain too many things. So part of what makes it so addicting is that he doesn't make you worry about that. He's just like, no, that's how it goes. Don't worry about it. It's fine. And you're just like, well, okay, sure, cool. Because you just want to get to the next part. Mm-hmm.
It's like playing a video game. You don't need to worry about why you can't go over this chest-high wall that leads out into the desert, because that's the boundary of the game. So it's and part of me wondered, is this going to be like a a next level Matrix where they're actually in the Matrix and there's another level, but no.
Oh my God, that's a sequel probably. Well, I think I've exhausted everything that I wanted to talk about with this. Is there anything else that you want to bring up?
No. Well, let me go through my little things that I have.
Your mental list.
Yeah, I don't really write things down because once I write them down, I'm like, it's written down. I don't need to remember it. And then I don't remember it at all. And then I look at it and I'm like, what the fuck did I have to say about this? So, yeah, I think we covered everything. It's a super fun book that you should totally read. But it is so self-indulgent, and it's not going to make you a better person. It is just going to give you a weekend of very good reading material. So
it'll give you a weekend of not having to think about the actual state of the world, because we're finally somewhere where good people win and like have better power than the people with money and whatever. Right. Where actually like having independent thought and skill does outweigh money, even though we know that that's like never true.
Oh, there was one tiny thing. If the government can't be trusted and or isn't competent enough, how exactly is the FBI going to arrest these people? That I was like, that's a little too easy. That suddenly for the use of the narrative that the authorities become competent, even though we have never seen the government do a goddamn thing, but suddenly they have the resources and manpower to arrest all of the executives of IOI. Mm-hmm. And I'm like,
yeah, I mean, it's like going even further than that. Why are they arresting Sorrento when he's not on camera killing this guy? It's all of his people that are doing it. So technically his hands are totally clean and he can just act like, oh, they just went too far. And yeah, it's on camera because we were going to use it for like an performance review or some kind of, because let's face it, living in the world that we do where cops can kill on camera and it's like fucking nothing. Having that like smoking gun doesn't feel like as big a deal anymore. And I don't know. So yeah, there's a lot about them nailing these guys to the wall that feels like they have more money almost than Oasis. They could easily have bought out all of these guys.
I know,
sure. Okay.
And why do they care? I guess they care about control of Oasis. I don't think they really give a shit about the money. So
yeah, because they want to be able to monetize Oasis even more so and make it basically inaccessible to anybody because they're trying to start charging everybody a monthly user fee and whatnot.
The Oasis Corporation doesn't have a board of directors or stockholders. And it's like,
they have OG.
Sorry.
Yep.
That's my new thing. That is, I'm going to start saying that a lot more. Just high wall. You're not supposed to pay attention to that. It's like you brought that up.
Like, to be honest, when you think about what our problems are that we're talking about here, we are doing the thing that they made the big mistake with in terms of writing with fucking Iron Fist, where they were like, let's just talk about boardrooms. Let's just have a board of directors just talking about everything all the time, and his superpowers will just totally be secondary because we're grown-ups and that's what we care about. And everybody's like, this is so boring. Why did you do this?
I like the boardrooms.
Shut your mouth. I'm shutting this down.
I haven't seen Iron Fist, so it's probably trash, but I legitimately love Syriana. It's just because, like, people talking about intrigue, that's what I love about Game of Thrones, is just how much goes on in a conversation. I believe you that Iron Fist is trash, and I've said this out loud to as many people who are listening. I think the entire MCU, except for Jessica Jones, is trash. So, yeah, I will buy into that. But I do like the kind of intrigue and the kind of power plays that go on. I don't like cut and dry good and evil, which is why I'm not really that big of a fan of the Jedi either. It's just like, oh, look, here's good guys. They have to fight the bad guys. I'm like, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Something more interesting.
Yeah, I feel you. Don't do Iron Fist, man. Oh, man, you would kill yourself. It's so... Okay, I'm not doing this. We only have like 10 minutes before this is going to cut us off, so I don't even want to start. Just forget I said anything about Iron Fist. I take it all back. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody who came. So I think, let's see, who's still in the room? We have Money, who is you. We have Kyle and Ren, look like the only people here, but Ashley and Peterson have been here earlier. Deanne Lakey had been here earlier. So thank you guys for coming. And if you enjoy the book club, please let me know. Because you know what? Let me take a look, because I don't know if we have any reviews for the book club, but I had been considering discontinuing this because I don't get that much participation and the downloads are pretty low. And yeah, we have one review on iTunes. 5 stars. I am now entertained 1000 by Entertainer 1000 from the United States. Natasha. I am incredibly happy that you've managed to turn podcasting into a full-time job, and everyone else should be too. Every podcast you make is fun, interesting, and belongs in my must-listen category. I'm excited to see you tackling more books, and I can't wait to see what's next. Thanks. Oh, thanks, Entertainer 1000. They left that comment in June of last year, but I just don't check comments on this particular show that often because we only do it once a month. So thank you for leaving that review, and we haven't had another one since then. So that's kind of evidence of why I'm considering discontinuing this particular show. It's a lot of work to, fit a book into my schedule every month.
Yeah, and it's expensive because you need a book, and you've got your there's your hosting fees and your subscription to Crowdcast, and then there's usually the audio book too. It's a lot of work. It's super rewarding, at least as far as I'm concerned, but I'm kind of a listener, not someone trying to make a living off of this. So if you like the book club, if you have ideas about what we should cover, let us know.
Or if there's a format that you're interested in seeing. I would be interested in hearing if other people listen to other book club podcasts that handle things a certain way or have like bits or whatever. And if somebody was like, well, what if you did this? I'm open to hearing that. But it's tough because, like you said, I find it rewarding. It's books that I wouldn't have read otherwise. I love that aspect of it. But when you are doing as many shows as I'm doing, averaging 8 a week, it can, adding another one every first weekend of the month on top of that it doesn't seem like many people are even interested in can be a little bit discouraging. So yeah, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know if you like it. I think that's it. Do you have anything you'd like to add, sir? Yeah, go.
Yes. If you liked my musings on the world, you can see me and my best friend Bitches cover the white nonsense that is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Just look for search for Unspoiled or Unscrupled Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You'll find it. We are about to wrap up season 3, and we are going to take a break because I've had a lot of Buffy, and we are going to start covering, and we're going to do it super fast so it stays still fresh. Season 2 of Sense8, and I kind of can't wait, and I hate that I lost the paper, scissors, rock and have to be the unspoiled one on this one too. So
you're like Maggie, she fucking hated that.
I'm looking forward to the change of pace, and we will return with Buffy. It's just like I have covered 3 seasons of Buffy now, being unspoiled and talking about the fashion choices and all the khaki camel toe, so I need a break.
Listen, you have no sympathy for me. I'm going into season 5 of Justified right now. As the unspoiled one. They're pretty there's some, I'm trying to think now how many shows I'm the unspoiled one on though, and I think it's almost all of them. Harry Potter, neither of us is unspoiled anymore. And then there's Dresden Files, which I have read. But Justified, Dark Tower, and Penny Dreadful, Twin Peaks. I guess the other one's Sherlock, which is patrons only. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you get no sympathy from me because I'm unspoiled on so many things. There was something that I was going to ask you. What was the most recent episode that you covered for Buffy?
We just finished recording. I forget what they're called, but it was season 3, episodes 19 and 20. But those have not aired yet. Okay. We try to stay a little ahead just because we have lives and things happen, so we bank a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. We are probably, for patrons only, which you can do at patreon.com/unspoiled, we are probably going to do a live cast. We will probably not do it on Crowdcast because I've had too much bandwidth problems. So I'm trying to find another venue for that.
Okay, cool. Well, whatever you find, let me know how it works out for you, because I'm always I'm happy with Crowdcast right now, but I'd be interested in trying some other stuff out too, because I have had some listeners who tried to get on here who have trouble. Somebody tried to get on here for one of the Broad Defense live calls, and she was using Safari, and Crowdcast told her to please try using a modern browser, which is the
as
most
someone in the
shade.
software world, like, Safari is the last browser that we will support for anything business.
It
So
cracked. I just was like, oh my God, that's so cold. So yeah, I've talked to a few people who have problems getting on here and they want to be a part of the live stuff, but they kind of can't. So
mostly for me,
out.
it's just a bandwidth issue. I think it's the fact that both me and Bitches are on wireless, so sometimes we get a little, trying to do the video takes up a lot of bandwidth. So I'm trying to see if maybe we can find an audio-only version.
Okay. I'm on wireless also, but...
Yeah, but I think you're just a little more reliable than ours are, and I'm not sure where the problem is.
That is so
like
sad.
there were a lot of skips in the last live one, so I'm going to try and find another venue. But I do want to have a live podcast for you guys because I'm kind of excited about the last episode of Buffy because I want to see how this shit goes down. Like, I don't know what's coming down between Faith and Buffy, and yeah, so.
Oh man, once you get started on season 4, that one is a controversial season. It's one of those ones that I like, but I'm one of the very few. And when I say that I like it, people side eye me really hard. So
Really?
We'll see.
Well, since it's off Netflix as of today, it's...
I know, what the fuck?
Just streaming intellectual property bullshit. I have had my old fag hag send me her DVDs of seasons 4 and 5. So
okay. That's cool.
And I have seasons, the last 2 episodes sitting on my computer. Don't ask me how I got them. It was totally legal, I promise.
I swear. NSA, what's up? Hi.
Hi, Jeff. Do you know Jeff? He's the NSA intern who listens to my Skype calls. So
what's up, Jeff?
He really wanted to go into musical theater, but he got this job out of college and he's still there 20 years later. So
probably better for you, Jeff. Not gonna lie to you. All right. Well, I think we can wrap this up then. Thank you again, everybody who came live. Thank you to Entertainer 1000 for leaving a review. And thank you to Chris for rereading this book and doing this show with me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for putting up with me complaining about the problems in this book.
Of course. I love complaining. It's one of my favorites.
We all do.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. And we will see you next month with... Actually, I should probably check that, shouldn't I? What is my next episode?
Girl with all the gifts.
Girl with all the gifts. Oh, that was my most upvoted of all the books that I put forth. That was the one everybody wanted the most. So that should be interesting. So yeah, Girl with all the gifts for the first Saturday in May, which is the 6th. The 6th of May, the day after Cinco de Mayo. So
I'm sorry, I
be
forgot
here.
to plug.
Oh, go ahead, quick.
May 20th, weekend of May 20th, WhedonCon, Los Angeles. Bitches and Money will be doing a live podcast of Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog.
Nice. That's awesome. I still haven't seen that. I should watch that.
So I will be blindfolded and taken into the convention so I don't see any Buffy cosplay. They could be a spoiler, and we will do the podcast and I will leave. So.
Wow. So that's fun. Neat. WhedonCon. I forget that that's a thing. I want a con after my fucking name. That's what I want. I don't know what it would be called. Winter's Con. WinterCon. That sounds kind of cool. I like that. All right, guys, make WinterCon happen. I love you. See you next month. Bye, everybody.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.